real discussion.
Right.
And she doesn't want anything in advance. And she's asked for no
prep. She's just having a conversation.
No prep, good combo.
I love it.
Things are gonna be authentic. Heels, rubber bottom heels from Paris. Louis heels from Paris that I've never seen before.
Can't get those in the States.
You cannot. These ain't her, you know?
Okay, here's the camera angle on the wide shot. And you swipe over to...
So typically during the show, I start with the toast of the Black-owned spirit of the caucus. And then, but if you don't want to drink, we don't have to. And, we toast to you.
You could just give me the sparkling water. I don't see a copy of my book. It's disappointing. Do you even own a copy of my book?
I do. I certainly do.
I don't believe you.
I didn't read it, but I bought it.
Doesn't matter.
Is it more important to read it or to buy it?
Buy it. Because there are people who are actually readers.
Right.
Right. And then there are people who just front to try to look like intellectuals.
And those are the buyers.
Those they buy.
Okay.
Now,
they look like intellectuals or are they supporters?
That's a good point.
Well, I have a fan base that's going to buy it if I put it out. It doesn't matter. But the people who actually read it and come in and ask about chapter 3, paragraph 4, those are the people who touch me in a special way, my heart. You know what I mean?
People who are in like on the nuances of, got it. All right. Very well.
Think about you making a film, right? And someone saying to you, I bought a ticket to the theater, but I didn't go in and bother to watch it. Right? It's the same thing. Yeah. It's very insulting.
Film is more of an immediacy type thing though, right? Like if I buy a ticket, I'm going to watch it right then, as opposed to...
Does he not know that you can actually buy tickets on Fandango or...
He's a little older.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Not as tech savvy, yeah.
He thinks you still stand in the line.
Yeah.
Like at the box
Show
office.
up at the theater,
and
indeed.
buy a ticket with a piece of paper.
He thinks he has to sit at the top two and sit in the bottom.
Trying to get to heaven first. Take up all the seats at the bottom.
Do you think there'll be a VIP in heaven?
I don't think so, you know.
Wristbands, will they work? +1s?
We'll find a way to create stratification, generally.
+1s.
Excuse me?
Definitely not +1s.
I don't think so.
No.
He'll try it, though.
That ticket is definitely...
He would definitely try it.
I can't get you there.
No.
I will try. I'll certainly try.
No, he'll say.
Yeah. Well, fair.
He'll say, I got you. Just get there. I got you.
I got you.
Right.
Yeah.
So funny because you have one of my girlfriend's books over there, but you don't have my book.
Where's your girlfriend?
You have Climb, but you don't have my book.
Michelle, I don't even know what
I'm going to take a picture of Michelle's book.
Please do.
She works for Blackwater, and I'm going to say, I went to do an interview, and your book was there, and mine wasn't. And I'm the only, #1 best-selling author that I believe that is featured in that.
Oh, no. Heather McGee is best-selling. Bakari Sellers is best-selling.
Has he been here?
Bakari Sellers?
Yes.
He has not. He's on his way, though.
But I'm here, and my book isn't.
You are here. And we will pay you the proper homage while you are here.
Do you understand the point I'm making? He has me come all the way out to God knows where and doesn't even stroke the ego by having the book. But,
Egos can be stroked when they listen.
I want to hear this.
I feel as though
we are. I mean, as an author, I'm just saying, as an author, there are little things, little gestures that make you feel validated, right? Just really small things, like him having the book somewhere in this house, making no effort to picture it. In fairness,
my team and we did not know that you would be here almost until they came out, and it's quite the hike. But we appreciate you coming, though.
You say we as if you don't do majority of the prep in terms of content. They're responsible for the technical aspect, which is exceptional. They've executed their part on a very high level. However.
Listen, I've always left much to be desired. throughout my life in every arena. That's it.
Self-depreciation.
That's it. Some call it depreciation, some call it deprecation, but also some people say tomato. Also, some people are from Ohio.
Oh my God.
So I don't judge.
Why am I?
I don't judge based upon the way that people pronounce
Where
things.
geographically am I right now?
Youngstown Public School.
But where geographically am I? Like, this
Maryland.
is Potomac, Maryland. Okay.
Maryland, yeah.
And how far exactly is this from DC? I don't even remember how I got here.
Listen. Welcome back to the Caucus Room. I am your erstwhile chairman, Don Calloway, and today is an extraordinary day at the caucus for a couple of reasons. First of all, because we have officially integrated the Caucus Room for the first time. We have our first woman guest, and I'll tell you all a little bit about her. One of the more remarkable public figures in the history of modern American public life. Two-time HBCU graduate, for God, for country, and for Central State University, Howard University master's degree. White House staff, high-level senior White House staff, not once, but twice, and we will get into that. From the Rust Belt, a real sister from Youngstown, Ohio, a reality TV star, a best-selling author, and one of America's foremost intellectuals, in addition to her role as one of America's most beloved reality TV villains. My dear friend, my longtime friend, the great Omarosa Manigault Newman. How are you, ma'am?
Thank you so much for welcoming me in the caucus room, but I do have a couple of questions.
Please.
What caucus are we? Is this Black Caucus? It's like CBC
No,
weekend?
no,
Or
it's
what,
just-
like, what caucus room are we in?
It's just, I was
I
thinking
need
about...
you to set the stage for the folks at home.
Well, first, I will answer that, but I will first say, in honor of you being here, I know you don't drink much, perhaps, but we have Abisola Whiskey, a sister out of New York State, doing an amazing thing. She makes a really solid brown here, so I'm gonna have a sip of that. And toast to you and your continued
And
excellence.
what do you have here for me? Is this?
This is La Croix.
Cranberry La
This
Croix.
is cranberry, Raz cranberry La Croix, and toast to you. Welcome back to DC and to your ongoing success.
Fantastic. Now, I have to also make just one correction.
Please.
Otherwise, every marauder in this country will be very angry at me. It's for God, for Central, for State. You remixed it, and it's
Forgive me.
okay.
Forgive
But
me.
I just want the marauders to know that
Listen,
I represent for the maroon and gold wherever I go.
these things matter a lot, and you and former caucus chairwoman Joyce Beatty are perhaps the foremost Central State grads in the country. Talk about your time there and what it meant to you.
Attending Central State was probably the most important chapter of my early adult life. It's where I found my mojo. Right, I was Miss Central State, so
Is
being
that right?
HBCU queen.
Yes. I did not know that.
It's a lot of pressure. You are under a microscope. You live in this fishbowl, and you have to be excellent at all times. I was very happy to start my entertainment career there as well. I was on the radio, a part of the television production programming, and of course, an editor of the newspaper. So definitely formative time, but more importantly, the relationships that developed at Central State formulate the fabric of who I am. My friendships, my mentors, and the education, the quality of the education that I received at Central State. It just prepared me for what was to come.
What'd you study there?
Communications.
And was Central State your first time kind of in a public-facing capacity? Because you kind of, every time I've known you a long time now, in full disclosure, right? From the moment I met you, you seem like you are very comfortable being a star, right? And not like a famous for DC star. You very clearly, you own the room. You are clearly like, the one in the rooms that I've seen you in. Did that start at Central, or was that a Youngstown thing?
Definitely a Youngstown thing. In Youngstown, pageants are, what we do.
Oh, you're a pageant guy.
I'm definitely a beauty queen.
Okay.
And I was so honored to be the first African-American woman crowned as Miss Youngstown, went on to compete in the Miss America system, which was Miss Ohio, that sort of thing. And so that kind of was the thing that catapulted me into public life, was being Miss Youngstown.
I don't think people know that Omarosa was a pageant girl.
Could you not? Like, every part of me oozes beauty queen, right? The way I talk and respond and how I stand and how I carry myself, that really came from all of those early pageant coaches who, really wanted to make sure that I had poise, grace, and of course, world peace.
Okay, very well. So Howard, and I don't want to spend too much time. We tend to love our undergrads more than we care about our masters, but I know you have an affinity for Howard. So talk about your time at Howard. What'd you study? When were you there? What'd you do?
So I was at Howard for my master's and doctorate.
Oh, wow. Excuse me, Dr. Newman.
I'm
Another
an
thing
ABD.
people don't
I'm
know.
in the land of ABD. So I went there for my master's, and I started my doctorate at the same time that I was entering the White House. So just
for the
imagine
first or
being
second time?
the first time, the Clinton White House. So imagine being a doctoral student at night while working in the White House. So that was the balance. And then I got to the dissertation phase. And then there was this big chaos about an election with Gore and Bush and all of that. And I decided to go to Florida to, do whatever we were trying to do at that point. And it was also time for my defense. So I didn't get to defend, but I've done a complete doctorate. So I spent 7 years at Howard. I do love the Mecca. I continue to teach there in the executive MBA program there. I continue to serve on the board of the executive education program, and I continue to give back in any way I can to the Mecca.
That's what's up. So you just mentioned it. You were in the Clinton White House. And, I think some of us who are deep in the game in D.C., we had Jamal Simmons in here last night.
You had Jamal here?
Yeah.
Wow, he's a big
His seat
part
is still
of
warm.
He's a big part of my early time in the Clinton administration. I was an advance person. I started out doing logistics in advance before I entered the White House. So there were these freelancers. They would get you to go to different states to do the advance work. And one of the people who trained me was the great, brilliant Jamal Simmons. He was the lead advance for the Clinton White House. And so he taught me a lot of what I know about advancing. I had a chance to watch him. The first time that I met Bill Clinton, Jamal was the lead for that particular trip, and it was in Detroit.
Really?
I remember it so very
His
clearly.
hometown.
Because he walked off, the president was coming off the plane. We were on the tarmac greeting him. And Jamal walked up and they dapped each other. I was like, oh, okay. I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to say when I say something to the president? Jamal walked up and dapped Bill Clinton. So that, that was kind of my first kind of training in the world of advance before I eventually took a full-time job working in the office of scheduling and advance.
Okay.
On the Vice President Gore side.
Okay.
I didn't move over to the Clinton side until a little bit later.
Well, I think it's one of the things we've kind of explored here is that the vice presidential operation is a whole thing too, and it's a substantive, meritorious part of being in the White House. And so you working for Vice President Gore, what did he have you doing every day, and what did you get out of that experience?
So scheduling is a very important role in the White House. Trying to figure out the president's schedule or the vice president's schedule is probably one of the most valuable resources in Washington. To get 5 minutes with the vice president or 5 minutes with the president, can you really put a price tag on that?
You can't.
And so to be at that age, I'm 25, 26, and we're managing as a team the vice president's schedule. And then I had to go to these scheduling meetings where we sat with the president's scheduler and then the first lady's scheduler. And so all of these principal schedulers were always in this room. And we would sit there and figure out how to manage time.
See, you're using the language of the game, right? So what is a principle? Tell people. I can tell you know this stuff, and this matters because we're establishing that you were in the game long before 45. And I want to establish that, people, you know this town, you know D.C., you know politics long before the Trump White House, right?
Yeah, I think that's important for folks to know. But when you ask about what a principle is in the world of politics, the principle, starts at the top. Of course, the president is the essential principle. And if you have the ability to work on one of the principal staffs, there's a hierarchy. There, of course, are protocols. And then there are extreme logistical concerns that go from the local level all the way up, meaning coordination with local law enforcement, local press, to all the way up to Secret Service coordination, everything from when the helo touches down to when AF1 is taking off or AF2 is taking off. And the logistics go across geographical power structures, that sort of thing. So what you do in terms of the principal drives your day.
Okay. Where did the general interest in politics come from? Because you didn't come to D.C. to work logistics and scheduling, right?
No. I come out of the labor union. You mentioned that I grew up in Ohio, Youngstown, which was a big steel mill town until they closed down. I know you know a lot of that coming out of the St. Louis movement as well. My family was very involved in the union movement. In fact, I talk about passing out leaflets when I was like 7 or 8. But if you want to talk about politics, let's talk about unions and who actually control things in a particular town. And I would say that you will always point to union leadership and organization as the centerpiece of any good political movement, right? So that's really where I cut my teeth in politics.
The world comes to know of you in 2004. Via
2004,
the first iteration of The Apprentice, right?
Yes.
What are you doing between the Clinton White House and 2004 when you make a global splash as the Omarosa that we all now know, or think we know?
I experienced my first major political defeat when, of course, I left. I moved from Gore's office to presidential personnel.
Okay.
On the Clinton side. I
Break that down. What's the
presidential
PPO?
personnel. I talked about logistics being important, but PPO is extraordinarily important. Presidential personnel, I worked with the great Bob Nash.
Yes.
We love Bob Nash. And Bob Nash was over presidential personnel, which oversaw the hiring for all of the agencies and appointments for the administration. And I had the guns and money portfolio. So I had the Pentagon, Defense, Commerce, Treasury. You know,
and you're hiring people. You are figuring out who comes and works in the administration.
We put the packages together for the recommendations. We had to identify Sherpas to get them through the confirmation process. And of course, the all-important background checks.
Yes.
So I worked very closely with the teams who vetted these candidates. If there were issues that came up, you know, you either could resolve them, they were something that you can move forward with, or the candidate was disqualified immediately. I know way too much about too many people in this town.
Vetting gets personal, right?
Especially, I see some people when they see me and they know that I know everything, and they're like, or people, the same people who are like, I would never work in the White House. And I'm like, correction, you could never work in the White House because of certain things.
Big difference, one letter difference, but big difference between would and could.
But they also know that we can't disclose it,
right?
Because of the sensitivity, the sensitive nature of that information. So that was a very good time for me. And that was eye-opening, sitting through those confirmation hearings, seeing the strongest people you know get drilled and really reduced to just sniveling, scared people was incredible.
But I want to, so let's emphasize, because we haven't talked about PPO or any of that yet on the caucus. And the fundamental purpose of the show is to not just have compelling and interesting people like you, but to lift the hood and show what's really happening, you know, how this town works.
But why is it so hot in the caucus room? Is that by design?
Listen,
put you in the hot seat, literally.
I can have our people try to work
Don't let your people do anything. I think it was set up intentionally to make you uncomfortable.
Listen,
right?
the pressure's on.
I really do feel like I'm on the hill being drilled right now.
So you had the plum book, or you had some division of the plum book that you were responsible for filling. Tell folks, what is the plum book?
It's so interesting when people talk about the plum book, because neophytes will get the plum book and they go through the plum book and they'll identify a position that they think that there is a slim possibility that they have a chance of being Deputy Assistant Secretary of Treasury, right? And they don't understand that somebody like Biden, for instance, Joe Biden, by the time he gets to the White House, the moment that he says, "So help me God," has staffers from his first campaign when he was a young, senator to, committee folks, to folks who have been on the campaign, the presidential campaign. He has probably 2,600 people in his own circle of influence that he has to take care of.
That's right.
Or those folks don't want to go in, but their 24-year-old son wants to go in.
Absolutely.
And guess what? We have to take care of those folks. So forget about the plum book, everybody. Those positions are already filled.
But there's
And we
donor
would get
sons.
those, I didn't mean to cut you off. We would get these resumes from people with codes on them. So the true mystery is the codes. So if it says FOJ, that's a friend of Joe's.
Okay.
And there'll be a degree to that level, meaning it doesn't matter what you have to do. I don't care who we promise that appointment to. You're placing this person in that particular slot.
Do people know that?
They don't, because you know why? This last transition with the Biden and Harris, folks were calling me, can you help me? I've been through the plum book.
No. Hold on. Biden Harris.
Right?
People are calling America's biggest villain, fresh out the Trump White House,
Yes.
to get in the Democratic Biden Harris administration.
Yes, because let's say if we're playing baseball, does it matter what uniform you're wearing? The game doesn't change.
The game is the game.
Right?
That's
If the game changed it, then yeah, you probably should call someone else. But the game of getting into one of those appointments has not changed from the beginning of Washington's administration, right?
And if you know the game.
And if you know the game and you know how to navigate, it doesn't matter who's sitting in that seat in the Oval Office. If you want to be appointed, you want to talk to somebody who's worked in presidential personnel.
That's right.
I know the process from the moment the president says, "So help me God," until you're actually sitting in your office. And what are, the challenges, what are some of the advantages, and how to navigate. And so you could try to call someone in the Biden-Harris circle. You won't get through. Everybody changes their number after the inauguration if you're smart.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to get a job at that point, it's too late because you should have been working on transition, or even better yet, on the campaign.
That's right.
Then you'll have a realistic choice. So when you ask about the plum book, please, the folks who are sitting at home who want to go work in the White House, please do not be disillusioned by the plum book.
Right.
There are very little positions left at that point.
Right.
And they will set up a site and tell you to put all your information in and upload your resume. That is not to fill positions. That is a fundraising tool to update your contact information so they can use it for their reelection. It has absolutely nothing to do with hiring.
You mean tell me our Lord and Savior Barack Obama had all these people who believed in hope and change filling out ppo.whitehouse.gov like, I'm going to get picked.
Yes. And they never contributed to the campaign. They never passed out one thing. They never made a phone call. They weren't in the trenches. They've never been to Iowa, God forbid. I mean, God bless you. They've never been to New Hampshire. Hell, they've never been to South Carolina, North Carolina. They have never, ever been to Cuyahoga County, Ohio on behalf of Barack Hussein Obama. And they think that they are going to be chosen because of their credentials. Your credentials have very little to do with your appointment to a political appointment.
Wow. Now, I feel like this is a whole rabbit hole that we could go down.
We shouldn't have gone down there. You just mentioned the plum book.
Yeah, no, this is good, though. This is good. So, from after Gore, after
I left PPO, went on the campaign, got to work under Donna Brazile, first African-American woman to lead a presidential campaign. We lost in the most dramatic way. The Supreme Court made the decision to stop the counting. That's the way George Bush became president.
In 2000.
That's right. I remember taking a flight from Florida. I was in Miami, flying to DC to my apartment and thinking, I don't have a job, right? So the campaign was going to pay you till the end of that month. But after that, I had no job.
And this is in January of 2001.
Moving into February. Remember the decision moved into February, and it was Black History Month, and my black ass didn't have a job.
But you're still in D.C.
I'm still in D.C.
Young single gal. And what do you do?
I call the Howard Network. I call Ms. Dudley, Carol Dudley, if you're watching, I love you. I call Carol Dudley and explain the situation. She is the head of career services at Howard in the graduate school. And she says, oh, I still have your resume. And she's like, let's dust this off. And I was employed within 2 or 3 weeks after that.
Awesome. So tell me about how you eventually get on season 1 of The Apprentice.
So what? That's 2001 after the Clinton Gore thing happened, and so I took a job working in research and policy, which was excellent. I also then went to the DNC.
Ah, okay. Break that down. What are you doing
Terry
there?
McAuliffe was the head of the DNC, and Kevin L. Jefferson was heading their fundraising efforts.
Okay.
And he invited me to be a part of the fundraising. So after that policy job for a year, I went in and I was doing fundraising and going around the country. I think it was called the African American Leadership Fund.
African American Leadership Network.
And
that's
we
right.
were going out and we went to Chicago. We met a young senator at one of these fundraisers called Barack Hussein Obama.
But before that, before you meet him, I'm just trying to put together a broader narrative here. You're meeting all the rich donors at the DNC.
And keeping my lists.
Keeping your lists.
That's the key to
Keeping your lists.
politics.
Focusing on the African American donors. So you're meeting all these rich, important Black folks. You have already worked a presidential campaign, and you've been at PPO. So you're putting together high-level placements, and you have quite the network at this point. You didn't meet people because you were on TV.
No. Oh, no.
And what are you doing with all this? I mean, you're young, and you have to have some idea of, now I'm developing some real proximity to power here.
Well, because in any political operation, the first person hired, last person fired is the fundraiser. I didn't know what actually drove the machine, and it's fundraising. And so I shifted from being a policy person to being a fundraiser.
Okay.
Because that's really where political clout is.
Okay.
Would you agree?
Unfortunately, yes. Yeah. I mean, and, you know, I think it's changed a little bit in a post-Trayvon Martin era where grassroots politics and organizing means a little bit more than it did when we came up in 2000 and people were still trying to get on TV and all that type of stuff, which people are still doing. And yes, you have to have enough money, but I think that the role of money in the modern era is just a little bit diminished as the role of organizing goes up just a bit.
I disagree.
Okay. Why?
Because here's the thing. You can organize the GOTV operation. Get out the vote is probably the single most important aspect. But if you cannot put ads on television and do mailers and get bodies out, it doesn't matter how great your grassroots or operation is. In most cases, I mean, there are outliers, right? But in most cases, the money is going to Trump. As much heart and effort you pour in, the reality is we've seen it, candidate after candidate winning because they control the narrative, they control the airways.
So since you just said that word, double entendre, we're going to skip around a little bit here.
Before we skip around, I have to acknowledge what it was like working under Terry McAuliffe at the DNC.
Who became governor later.
Who became governor. But that was when I learned about the power and influence of fundraising. Terry was literally, he let us do whatever we wanted. He's like, just go, tell me where to fly in, where I need to be. Here's all the principals who are available. I'll get them there. And he allowed us to do our thing. And that was really instrumental in my political career. So I have to acknowledge that time
Full respect.
at the DNC.
Terry had a lot of energy. He was hustling at the time. And he knew every rich person who ever voted Democrat for anything.
I thank him because he helped me understand. He used to say, build your list and work your list. Right?
Yeah.
Build the list and work the list. You guys need to spend more time working your list. And I understood what he meant. I would have to call the key donors and make sure that I wasn't just touching them when I needed money, but making sure, how's your family? How, you know, that sort of thing. I learned all of that under Terry McAuliffe when I was at the DNC.
So let's talk about how you get into reality TV the first time.
Yes. So this was around 2003, and the guys who were doing fundraising with me, Kevin Jefferson, Irvin Bernard Reed, they were all obsessed with Donald Trump. And they saw an ad where Donald Trump was saying, you could work for me, you know, in that voice.
Okay.
And they were saying, there's a show and you could become the CEO of one of Donald Trump's shows. And it was like 3 or 4 days before the deadline. And they were doing a casting call in DC. And so the guys had left some paperwork on the thing and I picked it up and I was like, you know, and I called one of my girls who was in the film program at Howard. I was like, can you do this little audition tape for me?
So
And
she came with a
unfortunately, it's a
camcorder.
perpetuity. My audition tape is on YouTube.
Is that right?
Oh my God, it's real bad. But it was enough to get me a slot for when the producers came, and the casting directors and producers came to DC. And I remember walking in the room, and the guy had his foot on the table, and I was like, "You're in the presence of a lady. Take your foot off the table." And then the guy has told me this 20 years later that was like the moment when they knew.
Really?
Like, I told the producer of the show, like, "That's disrespectful. That's not going to work for this interview, and this is how we're going to conduct the audition."
So you come in with pretty solid credentials, as good as, if not better than everybody else who was in your cohort for the show at the time. How did you end up not only being denoted the villain of the show, but it seemed to be something that you actually embraced pretty early on, right?
Yeah.
How did it happen? And then why did you decide to, you know what, let me ride it out, right?
It's because of soap operas. I was obsessed with soap operas. And that combination of being obsessed with soap operas and my brothers being obsessed with wrestling. And the common denominator in both of those genres is that everybody, they like the hero, but they love the villain.
Yeah.
Right? They love it. If you watch wrestling, my brothers used to love wrestling. They loved the heel. That was the person who, even though the crowd was booing, they had to see him. They wanted more of the villain. It's the same with soap operas. Alexis Carrington would come into the room with her furs and her style.
Yeah, well, so you're proving you're grown, like me. Tell them.
Dallas.
Yes.
It's, you know, it's
Dallas Falcon Crest.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And it was the chick that sashayed in, and she was like, "No, I demand that you give me what I want,
right,
or I'm going to throw my champagne on you and toss my caviar in the air." And so a lot of what I did on that first season was the cardinal rule of reality TV. Don't go on reality TV and people forget your name or forget you, right? And so that was really my goal, was to carve out a space for myself and, by God, allow this country to remember my name, whether I won or not. That was my goal, was to
You have a
leave that
memorable
mark.
name, first of all.
I do.
I've never met one before or since, or heard of one before or since.
And it's the shortened version. I have a very long African name.
Really?
Yes, my name is Omarosa Oni. But because they couldn't pronounce all of that, I cut it down to Omarosa. So, yeah.
So you and I both come from these HBCUs and these traditional Black families with these Midwestern/Southern roots. How did you feel comfortable, even if you knew that there was something there, right? You knew that there was a path. You felt comfortable embracing the villain role, which seems to fly in the face of the respectability we were taught at Alabama A&M and Central State and Howard, right? It seems to be diametrically opposed with how we were taught to carry ourselves and be representatives of the race and so on and so forth. How did you feel like you could embrace the villainy without the conflict of having to represent our people in a dignified and likable and upstanding way?
Because of context. I mean, if you think about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X was vilified, right? Somebody would describe him as the villain, but he was profound, right? I understand context, and I also had an opportunity to control my own narrative. As a Black woman, and one of the few Black women in prime time at that time, in 2004 on NBC on a prime network.
Reality show or otherwise, you were one.
Or otherwise, there were no other Black women in prime time on television, and so if being strong and demanding and smart and showing up and taking space, taking control of space, was considered being a villain, then call me what you want. Just spell my name right on the check. Because I wasn't going to dumb down myself or make myself smaller to make people more comfortable.
Right.
That's not my job. And so the labels came because they had never seen an Omarosa in the boardroom negotiating deals, being unapologetic, and asking for permission to be exceptional. And so that's really where this idea of being a villain came from, is that I did not and could not, would not play small or diminish, my skill set to accommodate people who were insecure about being in a space with somebody like me. Why are people so obsessed with Black wealth? And they villainize that too.
Because we don't see it enough.
If you're Black and
Ooh.
wealthy, they want to make you bad too.
Yeah.
Like,
because
how dare
do
you?
wealthy being Black?
Well, and then
How did you
become,
escape?
and then how do you become wealthy and Black and you came from the projects? Like,
Yeah.
and all odds were against you.
How did you escape? And then I'm
We
asking you,
built the system for you to not be wealthy. And
Right, and how did you hack that?
Yeah, how did you-
Right? You went to public schools. We think HBCUs have inferior education, so you only went to HBCU. Like, how did you beat the
yeah,
system?
but that only matters if you truly believe that Black shit is inferior.
Well,
No,
but see, I've never subscribed to that.
Not
I've
you,
been
not you, but
intentional
the
about
curiosity.
where I go to school. I have never
Yeah,
been
yeah,
educated
yeah.
at a PWI. Like, that's not
Yeah.
sufficient for my brilliance. It had to be cultivated in a place with fertile soil that could
Yeah.
actually handle
Yeah.
the growth of somebody like me.
mangoes don't grow in Boston.
Listen,
That's what I heard.
it needs plenty of sunshine and lots of nurturing.
So, from what I've gathered, you have very clearly and kind of intentionally embraced everything that you became in terms of the public eye and the public persona of you, and it's made you rich.
What part of this has made me rich? The hard
Reality
work,
television.
the grit,
No,
the
no, let's be
commitment to
clear.
excellence. What part of it has made me rich?
That's a very good point. But specifically, your professional existence in being a character on reality television has
Well, I
been.
wouldn't call it a character because it's reality TV, right? But definitely a persona. Like, you're never going to see me in any kind of weak role on television. That's not going to happen.
Okay. But it's made you rich. Cheers to that. Congratulations. I don't want to spend much time on this because I think that, recently in this, third or maybe even fourth iteration, the world came to know you through the Trump White House. I knew that you had a whole lot more going before that and after that. But talk about that experience. But specifically, focus on two questions.
You asked like 10 questions at
I'm a
one time.
compound question.
So how about one question at a time?
Did you know? 'Cause I was talking to you going in, and I
Okay.
saw how you convened when we were running Pine Street. I saw you convene all the Black leaders of all the major legacy organizations, and then some who ain't never talked to the White House before, right? I was in the room seeing you bring all these people together, and I
That
have.
often isn't told in my story.
Well, that's why we're here.
It's so interesting. Like, that was important to me, but that part of the work that I did, the foundation that I laid, is very seldomly shared.
No, and to your credit, you did that from the beginning, and you did it throughout the time that you were there. Because I was there, I was always invited, so I'll always show you love. I can't imagine, knowing you, that you would have brought those type of interests representing the Black community together if you knew how bad it was going to be,
Well, I think that
or how bad he was going to be, shall I say?
it's appropriate that we transitioned from the discussion about The Apprentice, because my knowing Donald Trump was probably one of the most complicated political relationships, right?
Yeah.
So we start on a reality television show in 2004, and you fast forward, and in 2017, we're now in the White House. And so when people start asking about questions about how I got there and why I was there, you have to start in 2004 to know that I knew this person. The world watched him. 28, 30 million people watched us on television, and everybody was subscribed to Donald Trump on The Apprentice at that time. Fast forward to 2017, where these people are like, we never liked Donald Trump. I'm like, are you serious?
Yeah.
Because
No, you did.
you did,
Yeah.
and I can show you how.
Yeah,
I've got Emmy nominations and awards to
And
let
Jesse
you know.
did, and Al did, and the
Puff,
rappers did,
and like
Puff, yeah.
I can show you a whole long list of people that I met through Donald Trump, right? Let's not forget Bill Clinton and Hillary were sitting at Donald Trump's wedding.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
That's
In the front row.
in the front row, right? So it's interesting that the narrative about Donald Trump, they try to start it in January of 2017, but it didn't start there. But it made sense for me to go in as someone who had a long political history, who knew how to walk in on day one and try to get things done. Let's be clear. I got the HBCU executive order passed faster than any other EO. I think it was one of our first EOs that we had enacted in that administration. So that shows you where my priorities were, right? I also, second order of business was moving the HBCU office from the Department of Education, where it was under Barack Obama's administration, into the actual White House.
So we can debate the legacy of Trump on HBCUs, because I see a lot now with Dr. Kimbrough from Dillard and all the other folks kind of on Twitter saying it really wasn't, he didn't give us any funding, and I'm not...
Who didn't give us funding?
The 45,
well, the
your
numbers,
guy.
I mean, I'm not going to, only because I worked on it. This has nothing to do with Donald Trump. I don't even know what the acronym HBCU means.
Right.
As the senior staff person who led that effort, you can look at the amount that was committed to and earmarked for HBCUs under the previous administration. I'm not just talking about Barack. Let's go back for the last 5 administrations to what was done. And it's a numbers thing. It's not really a debate if you are into facts.
That's what's up. So I'm going to let you go on this. The thing I admire most about you is something else that I don't think people know.
My book.
I'm going to get to that.
If you don't, I will.
Plug the book. But that's not my question, so they don't take my time.
Okay, fantastic. But we at some point in this podcast, we're going to talk about my number one New York Times
best-selling author. Please run it down. Explain how the book came about. Talk about what it is.
I have to tell you how difficult it is to get number one. I debuted number one on that list.
By the way, you and I know a lot of people that have written books. And we know a lot of people who claim to be bestsellers, and they are. Right. But you saying number one, that's a different level of thing.
I was the top-selling author in this country for those 2 weeks. And that is important. Just getting any slot on that list is important. You could be number 14, you're still on the best-selling list. But to sit at number one was very important to me.
And
it's extraordinarily difficult to do. I'm also a Wall Street Journal best-selling author. That's also extraordinarily important to me.
What's the name of your books? You just said all this and ain't said the names of your books.
It's Unhinged, available now. Right now, just order.
And it was about your time in the Trump administration.
It was about my time starting from the campaign, starting from 2015 to how we ended up against all odds in the White House. Because again, we were told it wasn't possible, it was never going to happen. Hillary Clinton truly was one of the most extraordinary presidential candidates I had ever seen in my lifetime, with credentials and experience, reach, network, and money. And so it's a story that probably should not have happened, but it did.
Are you proud of it?
Am I proud of what part of it?
Are you proud of having helped him win? And secondly, are you proud of the work you did during the administration?
You know, I want to thank you for, out of the entire universe of factors that go into somebody becoming president, of you giving me the power to choose a presidential candidate solely. But I have to...
It took me a second. Some shade. Yeah, okay.
I have to say that from the beginning of my time in that campaign until I left that, my sole focus was on advancing the policy agenda of African Americans. It had nothing to do with promoting Donald Trump as a person, as an individual, or any of the things that were important to him, which were not the things that impacted our community.
Right.
So I am extraordinarily proud of the work that I did for HBCUs, for Black farmers, for infrastructure, the tax reform bills that actually gave relief. Those are things that I'm extraordinarily proud of. But when people hang on me that I get to choose the president of the United States.
I didn't mean to do that.
I mean, you know, I just think it's pretty...
Okay.
It's pretty exceptional, but I can't accept it, that power.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I said a moment ago, and I didn't give props for giving you the credit. I was in the rooms with the NAACP and every other acronymically correct Negro organization that you brought together, and you asked before inauguration and throughout your time in the White House, you asked, what are our concerns? You made yourself available. Yeah. You asked how this White House and how you and your position could help advance. And I was there. So, I mean, you know, listen, there's no bigger critic of that guy than me, but I was there when you were gathering folks to make sure we had a place to place our agenda during that administration.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Now, the thing I'm proudest of you about, and the thing I probably admire you most for, is something else that I'm not sure people know about you. You have raised 5 kids, none of them biologically yours. So talk about your children and how you came to get them, why you came to be responsible for them, and what that aspect of your life means.
I will just say that I've had tremendous loss. You know, my brother was murdered. My sister died suddenly, you know, and my brother had 5 boys. My sister had 2 boys. The ones that needed me, I never called myself their mother, and nor did I try to replace their fathers. I love my siblings. I miss them every day. But their children needed me in a way that I was able to support them and help guide them. And so suddenly having boys in your home, you know, I was this single operative to having to look after children. And I love my nephews. I love them, love them, love them. They truly have made me the person who I am. But it was difficult. It was difficult, one, grieving my siblings, but also watching their children grieve. And so I wanted to provide for them everything that I could possibly provide for them. And the most important thing is stability.
Yeah. Well, look, for whatever the world says you are, here's what I know. On this show, we try to hear from people who have done it. We call it the game. There's this thing in D.C., politics, media, we call it the game, and that is a broad and all-encompassing term. You have played the game at the highest level, from White House administrations, media, talking head, authorship, and just being a public figure. You have played the game to extraordinary success, and that is something that is to be celebrated, because I've watched you for a long time, and I can tell folks that it was not given, you earned it. So full respect from me and all the folks out there who fuck with the Caucus Room, because I get down with you. So thank you.
Can I just say this?
You can. You say whatever you want.
It's not what they call you. It's what you answer to. And so everyone who has tried to put me in a box have failed, because I define for myself, what my success looks like, where I'm going, and what I want to accomplish.
That's all right. Well, you done did it. Cheers to you, Omarosa. Congratulations.
And thank you for my cranberry liqueur in the Caucus Room.
This is the Caucus Room. This is Omarosa Manigault Newman. I'm Don Calloway. We'll see y'all next time.